Hello and welcome to Innovation Lab, your go-to resource for all things biotech startups. Brought to you by the National Cancer Institute's Small Business Innovation Research SBIR Development Center. Our podcast hosts interviews with successful entrepreneurs and provides resources for small businesses looking to take their cutting-edge cancer solutions from lab to market. I'm Brittany Connors, the Director of Investor Relations at NCI SBIR, and today's host. In this episode, you'll hear a roundtable moderated by NCI Director Kimryn Rathmell during the Empowering Innovation in Women's Health event, which features female C-level biotech leaders who have been funded and supported by NCI SBIR, the American Cancer Society, or both. These leaders will share stories about the impact their technologies are having on women's health, how SBIR and ACS have played a key role in the growth of their companies, key lessons learned as leaders, and their advice for emerging entrepreneurs. Please note that there were technical issues when this was initially recorded, so we apologize if you hear intermittent disruptions. Without any further ado, let's introduce our panel. These are all incredible women, incredible stories. They're doing incredible things with their technologies, and I'm just really excited for you all to hear what they're doing. And thank you, Dr. Rathmell, for moderating.
All right, well, it's a pleasure to be back, and you all know me, so I'm excited for you guys to get to know all of these amazing women. So they have a range of stories to tell. I won't get in the way. How about if we just start? We'll just run down the line. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you're doing, a little bit about your career journey, and because this is a women's health focused event, how what you're doing works in the women's health arena.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, hi everyone. My name is McDavid, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a cervical cancer innovation company called Mission Driven Tech. It is myself and my incredible partner and co-founder, Dr. Ananya Balagoon, who is a radiation oncologist with Weill Cornell Medicine, and we work with an awesome team of collaborators to bring a new medical device to market. The type of tool that we're developing is used in what's called brachytherapy. You might be familiar with it. It refers to internal radiation procedures that they're incredibly powerful, and they offer curative treatment for cervical and uterine cancers, and it's actually used in a variety of other malignancies as well. The greatest challenge that we're solving in the field is that in cervical cancer, the 5-year survival rate outcomes have been stagnant for 50 years. So the survival rate for 5 years is just below 70%, and it really has not budged. And we believe that, our hypothesis, part of the reason that the survival rates are stagnant is because in this part of treatment, up to 40% of women actually drop out from the procedures, and their tumors will recur, and unfortunately they will die instead of being cured from their disease. And it's a result of the medical device equipment that's used in care being designed in the 1970s. And so the tools don't properly fit the female anatomy, the pain isn't properly addressed, and so you have this tremendous dropout in care. So we're laser focused on solving for that with a device that is female fitted, has safer features, and ultimately can improve the safety of the procedure and then improve the outcome of the woman who goes through treatment and ideally ultimately survives it. I came to this field actually from industry. I worked in technology, business, and media for many years. I was at Google for 11 of those 15. And then in 2020, I had myself a cervical cancer diagnosis. And I went through these procedures and I thought, well, gee, this is really strange. At Google, I'm used to working in industry and sitting with industry leaders and talking to them about the problems that they have in their businesses challenges and the things that keep them up at night. And we help build the technology and experiment with it and deploy it and solve those problems and scale it to industry and then watch industry advance. So I thought, here's a great use case of that model in women's health, and this is where I want to work. So I left industry 2 years ago and left to launch Mission Driven Tech, and it's been a fantastic and incredibly difficult ride. But I'm really happy we're having the conversation here today about the challenges and the opportunities and growth in the field. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Parvatiyar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ananya Health. We are a medical device company as well in the cervical cancer space. We prevent cervical cancer by freezing abnormal lesions after they've been identified. So after a positive pap smear and HPV test, what we are looking for in the SHIP trial, we have a point of care tool that can be used to freeze abnormal lesions by a nurse, a PA at the lowest levels of care. So providing that effective therapy to remove those lesions without having to refer women to a hospital. Our goal is to expand access to that procedure as we start to see more screening tools hit the market. We need to meet that moment. We need to make sure that those women have a follow-on pathway that can be accessed, that there aren't undue barriers to receiving that care. I am a biomedical engineer by training. I started my career in medical device and spent 5 years at a big med device company, all over the map, everything from cardiac access ports to urinary diagnostic tools for core body temp monitoring. And about 5 years into that, I got a phone call from a friend, as all good stories start, and I ended up moving to West Africa to work in public health. It was only supposed to be 3 months in West Africa, and wouldn't you know, that was 2014, and 2.5 months in, Ebola hit Nigeria. We were working with WHO and the Gates Foundation in Nigeria. Long story short, I ended up staying there for 3.5 years. And part of my job was to be in clinics, working with our clinical partners, deploying technology. And every single clinic I went into, there was always, the equipment graveyard, as we affectionately call it. All this technology that had been designed and sourced and bought, in lots of places, you spend a lot of time and money bringing something to a local clinic in a part of the world that is traditionally underserved. And then you plug it in and it doesn't work. And you don't have anyone who can service it. And you don't have the consumables that you need. And so when I moved back to the US, a lot of what I started looking at is how do we create technologies that expand access? And what does access mean, right? Not just the most remote regions of the world. We see some of those access issues in rural Alabama. We see them in Montana. We see them all over. And what we do is try to expand access to care at all levels.
For everybody, my name is Luisa Pineda. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Envisagenics. We are an AI drug discovery company. We use RNA sequencing to identify novel therapeutics. We've been building this company. My co-founder, we spin it out of Cold Spring Harbor Lab. We celebrated our 10-year anniversary in June. We've been awarded several SBIR awards, and I see all the folks here. So thank you for the invitation. If it wasn't for SBIR, I think I wouldn't be able to be here because it was the first grant. And that's how I got my first employee into the company. And I'm a Ph.D. by training. I was a fellow at Cold Spring Harbor, then went to investment. I was an investor afterwards, and then been running the company ever since. So yeah, exciting times, building something that was it's not overhyped, but I'm excited about it. So thanks for having me here.
My name's Dawn Mattoon. I'm the CEO of a company called Mercy BioAnalytics. We focus on developing blood-based cancer screening tests. We sort of have a view that while all the dimensions of cancer care, from detection to treatment, are important, we've got the biggest opportunity that we see to really have an impact on the public health challenge of cancer is in that early detection space, finding it at the earliest stages. And we have focused our efforts initially on the early detection of ovarian cancer. So we're developing a blood-based test for ovarian cancers. Actually, a lot of investment, but not a lot of innovation. The markers that we use in ovarian cancer detection really are 40 years old, CA-125, these canonical markers. So we've developed a really novel approach to this. It's built around, by design, a low-cost platform. Our goal is really global impact. And we were delighted to be included as a Bright Edge portfolio company. So Bright Edge made an investment in a $41 million Series A that we were lucky enough to close last year. I'm not even making this up. While I was sitting there during the fireside chat, we got a term sheet from our lead investor for a Series B. So it's really hard, but there is money out there if you're willing to do the hand-to-hand combat, and if you are addressing an important clinical unmet need. So I'll be around happy to chat with others. We got breakthrough device designation from the FDA earlier this year and are now working with the agency to take the test through all of the steps that are required for regulatory approval. So it's been an amazing journey. I'm a first-time CEO. I'm 100% learning every day, and a lot of times feel like I'm sort of making it up as I go along, and to have amazing mentors along the way, including on my board, other people that the American Society, the Bright Edge team have been phenomenal partners for us, just super, super lucky. I'm also a scientist by training, Ph.D. In molecular biology many moons ago. And so I think part of the message here is it is 100% possible to come out of academic training, scientific training, medical training, and start a successful company. Many of them on the panel are great examples of that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shadi, Saberi. We are an AI-powered platform for more accessible and personalized breast imaging. Our technology is a portable, automated breast ultrasound scanner that gets attached to a wearable accessory resembling a bra. It can scan the whole breast in 2 minutes without the need for a sonographer. Our goal is to make sure that breast imaging is accessible at point of care, and it can be operated by anyone, a medical assistant, a nurse. We decouple image acquisition from interpretation and developing AI to help with early detection and diagnosis. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and my research and focus was not at all medical life sciences, but I lost a loved one to breast cancer. And as a radiologist, I understood that mammogram is not sufficient for half of women who have dense breasts, and ultrasound is a great alternative. It was a question for me to why is ultrasound not as accessible to do screening, to do whole breast imaging. I'm putting my engineering hat on to find out what are the challenges. It's very operator dependent. It requires a skilled sonographer. As a modality, it's very sensitive. It sees a lot of things, but it's not as specific, so it can cause more false positive. And there's a huge shortage of sonographers. And also it's very time consuming, so it takes like 30 to 40 minutes to do. Trying to solve that with engineering, and it has been a great journey, but I would say not knowing how difficult it is, I always joke that it was a blessing in disguise to start this company. And as everyone said, there was a lot of learning on the job, not coming from medical industry, learning about regulatory reimbursement, clinical study design, all of that requires great mentors and advisors, and also like other founders who have been a few steps ahead of you. Those are amazing resources that have helped us so far to get to this point.
So I'm Kristin Sherman. I'm the CEO of Kovina Therapeutics, and we are developing treatments for HPV infections and cancers. So think head and neck cancer, think cervical cancer. Yes, there's a trend that you're hearing for cervical cancer, but also cervical pre-malignant infections. So at the end of the day, it's great to be able to diagnose is only one step. We need to be able to treat. And the question that I get a lot is, well, really haven't we solved this problem, right? We've got an HPV vaccine, it's highly effective, but it's not universally adopted to the millions that are already infected. This is a condition that sits dormant for decades and then rears its ugly head. So there is still a tremendous need for a therapeutic. And that's what we are focused on. So I am not a scientist. I come out of the business world. So my background is Eli Lilly, drug development, and then a medical device company. And then I jumped into the crazy train of biotech. So I've had to learn the science. Mentoring is key in that science world, that's for sure. But it certainly can be done. And we're excited to tackle the challenge of developing treatments for HPV infections and cancers.
All right, well, so that's round one. So now you know why I was really excited to talk to all of these incredible women. So, I mean, I love the themes of the things you're taking on are common sense and seeing a real gap and knowing that there was an option to move forward. So that's a big theme that I heard. But I also heard a lot about partners and mentorship and other tools that got you along the way. So I wonder if each of you could expand on what resources you drew on as you made the decision, or that got you to the big big good email. So.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So yes, you can't go at this alone. I would start number one in the encouragement to pursue this journey. So this was not necessarily something that I thought, okay, I'd been working in industry. I'd never really thought about starting a company, but I did earn an entrepreneurial mindset and an ability to solve complex problems. And when you start putting those things together outside of your day job, you're like, oh, okay, those are some of the pretty big skills that you need along the way. I also had my incredible husband is here, and I have said I always do better in the room when Matt joins us. I had incredible support at home to start taking big leaps. I'd survived a really deadly cancer diagnosis, and what we learned in the data was that the factors in the column that made the difference for me were effectively privilege, right? Being a wealthy white woman on a Google healthcare policy gave me world-class care providers that is inaccessible to most folks. And in conversations with my doctor, Dr. Balagoon, and in her perspective as a Black female physician scientist, that the inequity in this field was so grave and so preventable. And seeing the want for better tools and the willingness to work on something together and to be ready to build. I took those signals as, okay, this is how you get started. This is how you take leaps. And this is really what it means to bet on yourself. Nothing is a guarantee. So while we're here, let's do something really big. I think, like everyone has talked about, the journey is hard. Mentors are incredibly important. I want to make a very specific call out to funders and investors who understand what you're doing and are value aligned. Until ACS Bright Edge, we had not met an organization who said, it takes time and research, and it's very capital intensive to make headway in oncology. And we believe that's valuable, and we're in it for the long haul. And so until we found ACS, we swam for quite a bit. But once you find those folks who around you and behind you, believe in what you're doing and want to see you keep going, it gives you the confidence, particularly in those hard moments and those moments where you're not sure if you can keep going, to realize that you have the support behind you, and that gets us through some difficult times.
Yeah, I always hate, Eve is a really good friend of mine. I always hate speaking after she tells her story because it gets me teary every time. One thing I want to add on to Eve's story, or Eve's answer here. One thing, we have really great support. We're very lucky to be funded by the SBIR program, which I think adds a layer of credibility as well as funding. It's something to when you talk to potential investors and you say, we've been vetted, we've gotten a phase 1 and a phase 2, and that part of it is, I think, a given. Something that has also been useful for me, there was a lot of talk in the fireside chat about collaboration, particularly in the women's health space. The reason that Eve is a good friend of mine, we both work in cervical cancer, and we both understand that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? I'm happy to be a champion for what they're doing, because we don't want patients to get to the point where they need her technology and vice versa. But the more eyes we can put on the problem, the more we start talking about this in consciousness, the better it gets for everybody. So I have been very lucky in my, I'm a first-time founder, a first-time CEO. I've been lucky to be part of communities that really support female founders. And when I first joined YC, in my head, I was like, they don't care about women's health. They just care about enterprise SaaS, you know, and I was happy to be proven wrong in that. Oriana runs AOA DX and they were part of our cohort. So all of these women come and they support the things that you are building. I think there is a lot of collaboration that has been a huge resource for me.
Okay, so for us, I'm in New York City. So when I started my company, we started it because we were the postdocs that were working on the now FDA-approved drug Spinraza, which is for spinal muscular atrophy in children that couldn't move a single muscle out of Adrian Krainer's lab. I ended up becoming a VC, and then my co-founder in Adrian called me. He's like, "Hey, remember the RNA, drug that we're working on? The children are sending us thank you notes done by hand." Right? So I was like, okay, let's go. Don't show me the data yet. Show me the pictures of the children. One of them, and now, I'm a second-time mom. I use them in my pitch to this day because one of them is from a little kid from Chile, 5 years old, and I have a 6-year-old. So he drew Adrian like an Iron Man with a little mouse on his hand and says, not all heroes have capes. Okay, so I sat with him and I told him what to do in every single slide because I was looking at 30 biotech life science companies a week. And then I brought him to my bosses. Okay, and then his twins were born the day before. And when his wife brother broke, she goes like, "You're a pitch," and he still came, pitched. He looked like shit. Let me tell you something, but he still did it, okay? And then the most important part is, he tried doing it. He didn't pass slide 3 because he started writing all of the algorithms in the blackboard. And then he left. They turn around, they go, "What was he talking about?" And I said, "It's amazing. We use bioinformatics, machine learning. We were able to identify the type 1 SMA children. We put them in a phase 1. Now they're being treated. Now they're cured." And they go, "Why didn't he say that?" And I said, "Well, he's a scientist. He's a bioinformatician." They're like, "What?" So what we wanted to build was, a platform, a tool that is not existent. Instead of having, one bioinformatician that you collaborate with, build a platform that now, after 10 years, only took me 10 years to build it, but it really can, in a year now, from RNA sequencing all the way to an antibody, a binder, be able to analyze over, I think for triple negative breast cancer and breast cancer alone, we had 12,000 women's data set. 10,000 normal tissues, and we can identify targets that are prevalent in at least one of our targets that we just published. It's super difficult to drug, but we identified it, made a drug about it, and kind of like in a year be able to validate it. So for us, like tools, there's not there, build it, make it, get an SBIR grant, find a mentor. Find an investor, and very, very difficult to do. Apparently, you're supposed to kiss 200 frogs to find a prince. Really, in reality, at the end, the one that gave me the lead term sheet, that was somebody that looked like us. I'm Colombian American, and the 4 or 5 investors we got for A round were women and Jewish. B round, our partner, Bristol Myers Squibb, again, came in, participated in my strategic multiple myeloma research foundation, also participated, my current ones. So again, tools, if it doesn't exist, find it, build it. New York City, very difficult. Yeah.
I would say for us, a big part of it, this is going to maybe sound a little counterintuitive, but we've been very intentional. I have been very intentional about seeking out critics, people who are going to not tell us what we want to hear, but who are there to poke holes in what we're doing. And a great example of that, actually, because he's become a really important mentor of mine, is the chairman of our board, who's a guy named Stan Lapidus. And some of you may know him by name. All of you will know him by his work. He revolutionized cervical cancer screening. Actually, he invented ThinPrep and founded a company called SciTech that sold to Hologic. He also invented a technology called Cologuard, and so a lot of people are familiar with him.
Wow.
And when we first approached Stan, it wasn't to ask him for money, it wasn't to ask him to be on the board, it was to ask him to poke holes in our story to make us better. And we, at that time, was early days in the company. We shared the data that we had with him in ovarian cancer. I think at that point, we had 17% stage 1 sensitivity. Just to tell you now, it's 85% stage 1 sensitivity. But at the time, it was not great. And Stan looked at the data and said, this is so bad that I believe that you are representing it accurately, and I'm going to join your board. And so the lesson I think for me was we can't, not only should we not be afraid to expose our warts and all the flaws in our studies and our data, we should lean into that, because it's, in our experience, it's really drawn some pretty amazing people. Stan is one example, but this is more personal as a first-time CEO for me has been, I have a really trusted longtime advisor. She's also a CEO. She's been a serial CEO, very seasoned, very smart. And there's just a whole new language that you have to learn as a CEO. I was a scientist. I know that language. I don't know the language of deal documents and voting rights agreements and all these things that you have to navigate when you're putting financing together. And having someone that you can call really, really important for me. So my encouragement always, especially for new founders, new CEOs, is you want to have that diversity in your mentoring network. For me, Stan serves a really specific purpose as our chairman. Sarah, my phone a friend mentor, serves a different purpose, but both super vital.
Yeah, if there's something that is missing, or if there's something with the status quo that you're unhappy with, question it and go build it. And that's, I guess, the story that we had. I had a full-time job in industry. I was designing wireless chips. And to me, not having ultrasound accessible, I was like, if I can make it easy to use and low cost, why isn't it more accessible? So that was kind of like what consumed my mind every day at my job. And that's when I decided to start the company. And serendipity is also a big thing. When you network and meet people, big things can happen. So my co-founder actually met Sam Altman at a networking event at the time, and it was 2015. YC was mostly funding SaaS companies, like barely hardware, let alone life science. And through a conversation, he mentioned that his mom had breast cancer that was missed by mammogram and detected by ultrasound. We should apply to YC. So that's the story of how we applied to YC. It was just an idea. We didn't have any prototype. So everyone, their demo day goal is usually growth like 200% week over week. That's the target for demo day for us. Build your first prototype. So that's how we started. And we're also open to like hear people poke holes. When we tried to raise our seed round, the original idea was to build something that women can use at home, so for self-monitoring. So it was like a consumer idea, but we received a lot of resistance from investors, and sat with one that was friendly and started poking holes at our idea. And we realized that a burden for us to get the clinical evidence that is required to go to home. So we have to take like steps to get there. And also the SBIR and I-Corps program help us with the customer discovery to say, now we go to clinic, who is our first customer. So be bold, customer discovery and learning what are the hurdles in front of you, I think is a, part of.
So my main tool is looking under every rock. And what do I mean by that? We went the grant route and early on had great success. We had 3 different STTR, SBIR grants. We have used TABA funding for some regulatory support. We've participated in the Investor Initiative Program, and that is all wonderful. Obviously, non-dilutive financing is great, and that scientific validation, you're going and talking to investors and you can say, hey, I've been through study section, I've been funded. That's all wonderful. I had some matching money from Indiana. Yes, There's biotech in Indiana. I know people find that hard to believe, but I'm from Indiana and that's where the science originated. So that's the best part about all of the NIH funding. But then there are these other programs, the opportunity to pitch, the opportunity to apply for a competition, the opportunity to get feedback. And I'll make this real for you with what I call kind of this ripple effect. You cannot imagine how one interaction can lead to 10 other interactions and a total left field shift in direction. So about a year ago, I met Lauren because I came here to Bayer and presented our program just to get feedback, which was wonderful. At that time, had a chance to meet Michael and his team, invited them to Indiana. They came and did a boot camp, which was wonderful for our ecosystem. But in that same event here in Boston, I learned about American Cancer Society and the Bright Edge program. Said, hey, why not? I'll apply. And then they hand you all these mentors. And I was like a kid in a candy store. Not only did you have your mentor, a list of people you could talk to. So we just went down the mentor list and started having conversations, getting great feedback, but also getting warm intros to venture funds. So it helped with the 200, kind of cut that list down a little bit. And then one of our mentors happened to be the CEO of an oncology company focused on head and neck cancer, one of our indications. So tremendous wealth of knowledge, access to her advisors. So this one interaction coming up here and presenting to Bayer rippled into about 10 to 15 different interactions. So look under every single rock. Do not give up an opportunity because you have no idea where it might lead, who you might meet, what conversation might lead to a potential investor or a potential program or a potential pitch or a potential piece of information that you hadn't even thought about relative to your program.
All right, I love all of the different tools, resources, build your own that you all have, plus the drive and how much it's clear the personal investment that you all have in your products and your companies. I would guess that there have been roadblocks along the way. We've heard a couple of them, but I bet there are some good, interesting stories. So maybe we'll come the other way this time.
Well, I'm going to continue my Indiana theme because it's a little bit of a roadblock. We do not have access, obviously, to the same kind of venture money that exists on the coast, nor do we necessarily have access to the talent. And so we've solved that in a couple of ways. One, we've created a very collaborative ecosystem. And what that means is we all share resources. We call each other. We support each other. When we find out about a Bright Edge program, that goes out through our whole network. So instead of creating a competitive environment or a competitive ecosystem, we've created a very collaborative ecosystem. A lot of different organizations that you need to be on the lookout for, and especially in some of these more remote. We have the Indiana University Simon Cancer Center in town. They've got a drug discovery accelerator. We asked, and now we're a part of that. So again, it's back to looking under all those rocks, and don't be afraid to just pick up the phone and say, hey, will you help me? Will you support me? Here's what I'm doing. Can we partner? Can we work together in trying to create that collaborative ecosystem?
Yeah, I guess roadblock is you always don't have control over timing of events. One story that I would say, when we were submitting our first 510K clearance, it was during COVID. There was a lot of delay in getting our data. And one of the problems that we have was our biocompatibility lab NAMSA was short in supply chain, so their whole test was delayed, and that delayed our submission. So we tried to be creative, and recently FDA issued like a draft guidance that skin contact only devices can do a risk-based biocompatibility. FDA later asked for biocompatibility data, but you have to think outside the box. When roadblocks comes, there might be another solution, and there might be a silver lining.
Yeah, I would say for us, the roadblocks come in different sizes, and we try really hard to use the little ones to build the muscle memory that we need to overcome the big ones, which are inevitable. So that's definitely one lesson. The other lesson that I think for me is when the big ones come, the response initially is an emotional response, and you got to just ride that one out because that's not where the solution lives. So I've learned that when we have a tough interaction with FDA, or we have a tough data readout, something that's negative, that's unexpected occurs, the only person that I'm allowed to text is my husband. At least for an overnight, you sleep on it, and then always with a super creative team, super smart people who are really, really committed to the mission. There's a solution that eventually reveals itself. That path forward somehow always reveals itself, but it's never in the moment. It requires that little bit of reflection. So that's a tough earned battle scar sort of lesson, but it's been really valuable for us as we've gone along. And I can say with confidence that we haven't hit the hardest thing yet. I don't know what it's going to be or when it's coming, but it hasn't come yet. So we need to use every opportunity to build the muscles and prepare for them.
So I was thinking about that, and I think one of the biggest roadblocks I've found in the past 10 years have been biases, conscious and unconscious. You know, when I come in, my co-founder is Latino, and we go in and they tell us, we love seeing or pitching a couple doing a biotech, so innovative. And my co-founder and I look at each other, it's like, really? Because we're not together. Yeah, I mean, we are, but not really, right? Like we spend more time with each other than with our significant others. But in reality, we're not married. But we just wasted, 10 seconds of the pitch responding to the answer. Do you think a man gets that question when they go into pitch? Never, right? So, you know, the biases in every single meeting, doesn't really matter if it's scientific, business, investor, every single one. The head of the CIA, one of the only women, and I asked her that because it was impressive. She was the head of the CIA as a woman, and I said, how did you deal with that? She says, we call them, you know, like walls, and they're made of stone or brick. And at the CIA, we try never to get dirty like the pigs. So what do you have to do? You have to go around them. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, going around them. And that's just with perseverance and just figuring it out. With investors, sometimes we decided to generate more revenue as a biotech. So we actually have EBITDA, we're profitable. I have a platform company. We generated over 25 million last year. And because of that, I could say, you know, I don't need you. Thank you for, you know, being mean and not nice and having that bias, but I don't care. If you're interested, give me a term sheet. You want to see on my deck? Send me the term sheet. You want to do the diligence? Send me a term sheet. If not, you're not serious, I don't care. I don't have time for you. So, you know, if you have the upper hand, then you're able to say things like that. Even your tone changes. So, you know, and your confidence and the women power poise. I've learned that when I did the Pfizer women thing, but sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. So in reality, those biases and those things we encounter them. I mean, we're the riskiest people that you can, innovators, women, you know, first time entrepreneur. I have an accent, right? Like risk, like anywhere you can look at it, right? So you have to go around it and persevere. And you're the ones that are building the next generation of therapeutics, of medicine, of devices, of diagnostics. So that's what we're here in the States for.
Yeah, I love that answer. I love the idea that, you know, we were talking about this on the prep call. I really think for a first-time founder, it is a feature, not a bug, that you do not know how hard it's going to be. Because if you did, I don't know that you would start the first time. The second time, you're like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into and I know how to get past some of these things. But I think grit is a really big part of the process. So I'm going to jump on the obvious answer here, the roadblock being funding. Really hard to learn to fundraise. Period. And the way that you learn it is by doing it. And it is painful and scary and full of rejection, because that is just the way the process works. It's kind of like dating. You don't need everyone to say yes. That would actually be bad. What you need is a few people who are really committed to what you are doing to say yes and to be on that journey with you. And it's probably not going to happen on your first time. It's like doing an experiment and getting it right the first time, right? That never happens. So I think if you look at it in that same way of like, I'm building the muscles, I'm learning how this process goes, it gets easier over time. And that it's only possible if you are committed to what you are building from a mission perspective. So we love what we do and we're lucky to be able to do it, even though it's hard. I think that is the way that we overcome that roadblock. I think there's a lot of, how do you get to controlling your own destiny and, getting to revenue, making sure that you have the leverage when you get to that conversation. For us, we're an early stage company. We raised a seed round and looking at a Series A with our FDA milestone next year. For now, the SBIR program really helps us do that. We run a women's health company with cervical cancer. We think that is a big and important market, but it is not a traditional venture story that you hear a lot, right? And so we get a lot of pushback early on. We like to remind people, it's not only women in Africa that benefit, right? This is a big market. Preventing cervical cancer is something that affects every woman of childbearing age here in the United States. And if we learn something from that really big market because we prioritize access, that will come back and lower the cost of care in the US. It will help the outcomes and help expand access here. I think early on that story is really hard to tell. As you get more traction, as you get more funding, as you get more data, more people are willing to come to the table and listen to that because they see something that they like. But early on, I think you need to go around the walls and power through it and, use those learnings and future, the muscles that you build there.
Everything this entire panel has said is oftentimes it feels like an insurmountable barrier until you figure out how to, get the key to the keyhole. I'm gonna underscore the points around investment being a huge barrier and the gender bias, gender equity, and building solutions to address inequity into women's health. It's like, oh my goodness. Number one, not all of that is true. And number two, all the inequity that you've ever, needed, wanted, or never wanted to see, and all the conditions that myself and my incredible friends and colleagues are addressing are, areas of medicine that if men were impacted, these challenges would have been solved a long time ago. An illustration of one of the ways that we address these barriers. A lot of time at Mission Driven Tech, I talk about our work as a break the dam effort. We will try just about anything to get the folks on the other side of the meeting, whether from an investment standpoint or a partnership standpoint or visibility, to care about what we're doing. So our team had a really, creative idea of, okay, it's difficult to convince certain folks who are going to be decision makers, but what about the everyday woman who she herself, if we think about the screening statistics, right? At least 25% of women who are screened for cervical cancer will have an abnormal Pap test an abnormal result in their lifetime. So what if we just made the cervix a really identifiable icon? What if we got a cervix on the desk of every decision maker in America, right? What if we made the cervix something that you couldn't stop looking at and unforgettable? So we did this little experiment with a local artist to create these, they're coasters, okay? They're not a biotech product. But we started using them as a community feature and a way to reach decision makers and do something creative. So we created these as an experiment, and we actually started selling them again also as an experiment, just to see what would happen. And we had a lot of purchase uptake. So it's not the silver bullet here, but it's a demonstration of we will do just about anything to get our great work done, to make our companies more resilient and less dependent on market factors for funding, and to create megaphones and spotlights for this important work. There is a material problem here that affects half the world's population. And that recognition is the platform from which investment and then innovation flows. So my approach to these barriers is they are real, they are everyday and in our face. And, as best as we can for as much time as we have against this, we do everything we can to break that dam.
All right, fantastic. In the last couple of minutes, want to make sure we cover the funding again. We've other in the audience who would like to be you. We'll start here again, and then I'm going to have one more question. We'll run back. Tell us your story of how you got your funding and any anecdotes along the way, or sort of pearls in your ACS or NCI funding story.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, so as I mentioned, we are funded we're funded by the ACS Bright Edge program. And we've also had a number of other groups and organizations invest either directly into the company or award grants for us to be able to continue our development work. And at the beginning of our journey, myself and Dr. Balagoon participated in a business plan competition at Weill Cornell Medicine. And this was in 2022. So the notice came across our desk to say, like, do you want to participate in this? Do you want to put together a plan and pitch for capital? And a lot of my time at Google was pitching. So it's like, oh, I can do it over here. Fantastic. So we got started. And what we saw in the room when we got to the pitch competition was what we'd been betting on the whole time as we were building out our work and creating hypotheses around our work, was that we just needed visibility. We thought that we would do really well. And we did. We placed in that competition, and it gave us our first pre-seed capital. And with that, it was the hope. Money for a startup is oxygen. It's what makes the entire enterprise possible. And so when you get a check, when someone bets on you, you get to go. And your job is to go as far as you can go until your next checkpoint. We have hopscotched along the way. Benefited from an NIH-funded coaching program for an STTR that we just submitted last month. So, it's maximizing every single opportunity. And then when you get that win, knowing exactly what to do with it and building so that you can go get the next win that's going to follow with everything you've just produced.
We started out with angel checks, just very friends and family pulling money, and went through an accelerator in 2021. We got our first SBIR grant through a solid month of three of us sitting in a room and writing this out. It was hard won. I mean, it's great to have that credibility. It's great to have that fundraising. It's also good for the morale of the team to see that pay off. I think to know that you did something hard and, made that through. We recently, we wrote our own SBIR phase 2. It just got funded in September. We sat down and wrote our 12-page commercialization plan all together, and it forces you to think about where the direction, how are you going to do the things you say you're going to do. The process of pulling partners in and getting letters of support made us have clarifying conversations with those partners of this is what we're really going to need to get these things done. So I think, we've been lucky enough to raise external capital from traditional investors. We've been lucky enough to raise grants. But both of those teach you something different about the process. One thing that I want to highlight about NCI funding is we care a lot. We're a mission-driven company. We're a benefit corporation. We really care about the access issues because we think that is good business. We think it is better business to focus on the large market, globally, than just the US market that a lot of US-based pre-regulatory investors are hyper-focused on. So we are really allowed to do both things. We look at the US market as a big and important option for us, but the SBIR funding has allowed us to maintain some of that mission focus and look at that access in a way that we maybe wouldn't have the oxygen to pursue.
Okay, I'm very operational, so I'm gonna be a little bit operational. So first, I would say maybe 2 months. I did the business side. Most importantly, SBAs have and NIH and NCI have this like $75 and sometimes free by the state that you can go. And now I still send every single postdoc that comes in to go and take the class. It's a course, it's a 2-day course. I'm forgetting what the name is, but it's, you go in and they teach you what a business plan is, how it's written. I've used every single opportunity from SBA to get a free consultant to paid, to even just look at it. That was the first thing, to look at it. Even just the writing our grants. So our 44s, our 40, they're so different than the R21. So I've been writing grants since I was 15. That was my first grant, NSF, and I know I am a little overachiever, but I love writing grants. So I was like, oh, it's just the same thing. No, it's not. So even just the setup, just learning how you set it up and getting the feedback right away from SBA, from a consultant, from your PO. First thing, writing the customer, and then getting their signatures and their logos, because you're going to write those for them, and then they're going to go get them approved. Most of them are pharmas or something like that, at least for us, are pharma. So just every single thing, it takes so much work. I think every SBIR grant, it's around 100 pages. 120 pages, including the letters of support. They're not small, right? So they're tough. I mean, they're, and then the reviewer comments sometimes are tough on you, but it really makes you a better, kind of like company. And just, we do the first one, the $400,000, $500,000, really useful. First employee we hired. So it's like every little thing is useful, and just there's so many programs between the NCI. We've used the FDA one, we've gotten paid to go to bio, the investor one. I've used every single program. You can ask them. If there's one, I'm applying for it. Competitions, yeah, sometimes I don't even notice. We won the Microsoft AI World Competition, and when I met with the CBO for Microsoft in New York, she flew over, she sat down, and she looked up, she goes, "You're a female biotech CEO in New York? Nobody said that to me." And I said, "Yeah, I purposely didn't put it in the application so I could win it." Right? So, whatever gives you the edge, you do it, because the oxygen is needed for you to persevere and take your science to the next level. So just go to the stones, but SBIR has been essential, and commercializing and every single step of in the 10 years, I think we wouldn't be able to be here without it.
So we did probably the traditional route. We had an angel investor early on. We did a friends and family round after that. And last year, kind of outside independent market priced round that the company had done. And it was 100% kissing 200 frogs to find the 10. What I learned, I think, is two things. One is every interaction that you have with a serious investor, with someone who's really engaging with you thoughtfully, makes you better, even if they ultimately say no and it's kind of crushing. All of the questions that they ask helped us to refine the pitch, and so each successive pitch got better and better and better. That was really key for us to understand, and it took about a year to get the A done, finding new people to talk to. So it's not a couple of weeks sort of exercise. It takes a long time. The other thing is not all money is created equal. And one of the most terrifying things that I did in our Series A raise was say no to money. There wasn't an alignment of mission relative to what this particular investor had in mind. That was a much more short-term gain sort of perspective. It's this hard when you're not there yet. To step back from the wrong money is really scary. But in retrospect, I'm so grateful for some of the people that are outside of that circle.
Yeah, for us, fundraising has always been challenging. Well, at the time, YC investors, they will all get scared, and we go and pitch to healthcare investors, and they will say, "What, you're going to consumer? You're crazy." So it took us a while, and we raised angel money and SBIR, and we were very scrappy. It was me and my co-founder for the first 4 years until we were able to raise our seed round. And with money that we raised, we were very efficient to get our first 510K. And that was like a big milestone for us to go raise the big A round. And yeah, markets crashed exactly at the time we were going to raise our big A round. So yeah, you don't have control over timing. And again, we started like raising smaller pre-A, bridge, so that like we can show more traction. So like the expectations also, as I was telling you earlier, from investors is a little bit higher when you want to go to the A round. They want to see more traction, specifically if you're a cleared, FDA cleared device, and commercialization, as I learned, is expensive and it requires a whole different kind of talent. So that's how we're shifting the codes around.
So I already shared my SBIR funding and American Cancer Society. We had also raised a bridge, and we're able to do that with angels and local money. And we're working on a series. A lot of these later rounds come from relationships that you start early. Investors want to follow your progress. They want to understand that you've set goals, you've achieved those goals, you've de-risked your asset, you've de-risked your science, whatever that means in your world. So I'm having conversations now with folks that I've been having conversations with for 2 years, and that's okay. They've given great feedback along the way. I know what they're looking for, and I'm working towards that. And to your point, then I have a much better feel for how they're going to behave when they're around the table, because like it or not, whoever you bring into your round usually gets a seat in governance if they're certainly if they're the lead. So you're building these relationships and you're making sure that if you have the luxury of picking who you want, you understand how those relationships are going to play out on when they sit at the table. So start having those conversations now. Know that they're going to want to follow what you're doing, and it will take a long time, but it'll be worth it at the end.
Monique, I'm going to come back to you. I want to give the folks online just one quick opportunity to really participate.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we had a couple questions. So the first was about building the team. How did you build your team? Where did you find people? And then the second question that came in was about CEOs and kind of the business side of the experience. If you're a scientist by training, where do you start kind of building these skills?
I'll take team because I like to build what I call the bits and pieces model. So bits and pieces of really experienced people. There's a whole ecosystem out there of folks that are pharma retirees, biotech junkies who like to work for multiple clients. You don't need them full time. You need bits and pieces of them. Your burn rate can't sustain them full time. A lot of networking, but there are also a lot of fractional employment Partners just launched one. There's one down in the Research Triangle. Companies are offering these part-time exec and part-time device models, but it also allows you to access really experienced folks.
Add to that really quickly. Make sure the people that you're bringing on full-time, like the people that are going to be building that journey with you, that are coming in at the earliest stages, you can teach many, many different skills. You cannot teach like the core mission and values. Make sure the people that you are bringing in early are aligned with you there. You will, all of you will learn new things along the way. The things that you will be doing 4 years down the line are not what you thought. So make sure that it is somebody that you want to walk into the office and see every day.
You know what? I think I will say the opposite. I will say actually, whatever you're not good at, you go find. Because I think what's best is to know what you're not good at, okay? And what you're not good at, be okay, it's fine, right? Just find that person to fill that gap. And then for the business question, not scientists, CEOs, I don't know, I think I still Google half of the stuff. I'm kidding, but mentors.
Tech transfer offices, sometimes they have
sometimes they have.
referrals.
Yeah, it's just, you learn, I'm still learning every day. And I get really, really difficult criticism from my own investor, my own pharma partners, and, my head of BD is here. And, every time we say no, I say, it's not a no, it's a maybe later. And then we learn what we need to do. And then we get the science there. And then we come back to them, we say, here it is. So again, just learning as much as you can.
The one thing I would add on the building the organization is that the people who are really good and really passionate about the earliest stages of a company are not always really good, and more importantly, really passionate about what happens in the latter stages. And sometimes those goodbyes are tough, but they sometimes are necessary. And we've had to go through a little bit of that evolution at Mercy as we've kind of gone through our maturity arc. And there's a way to handle those that's incredibly respectful, but they're difficult, and it's important to make decisions if you think they're necessary.
And then one thing that I think is a little bit underrated, and particularly folks who are in academia, we have been really scrappy from the start, and where possible have had a lot of student teams, anywhere from undergraduate, graduate, PhD level students who are looking for capstone projects with real world application. So we've engineering, for communications, for IP. I mean, like the list goes on. So if you have a great university affiliate, that to find scrappy talent and staff what you can with that as efficient.
All right. We are technically out of time, but one sentence of advice that you'd give to people.
For me, it is mentoring and networking. You need to have as many conversations as you possibly can.
Believe in yourself and your mission, and everything else becomes easy.
It's come up already in this conversation, but I'll say the women's health sisterhood is a real thing that you should lean into, because this is a group that lifts each other up.
Just persevere. Science will bring the money. Just believe in it, continue building it, and it will come to you.
Spend time and understand your customers. Make sure you understand who you are building for. And it is really easy in the early days to think that as investors. It is not. Make sure you are talking to your customers at every step of the process.
Keep going.
All right. Well, I want to thank this amazing panel. I would love to, this was a table and we could have dinner together. These are incredible, incredible women. And thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you to Dr. Rathmell for moderating and all of our incredible panelists for sharing their unique perspectives. As always, don't forget to check our website, sbir.cancer.gov, for the latest funding opportunities and commercialization resources to support your journey from lab to market. This was Brittany Connors from NCI SBIR. Please join us again for the next installment of NCI SBIR Innovation Lab, and subscribe today wherever you listen. If you have questions about cancer or comments about this podcast, email us at nci.info@nih.gov or call us at 800-422-6237. And please be sure to mention Innovation Lab in your query. We are a production of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, National Institutes of Health, National Cancer Institute. Thanks for listening.